Welcome to Getting Beyond Queen Bee Syndrome. I'm so excited to be working with someone I admire so much and enjoy so much, who is Louise Pritchard. And she has this amazing experience with top companies, including Fortune Magazine, including an Eggleston Children's Hospital, and Holiday Inn International. And now she has a marketing company with a partner, Sherry Folk, and they help brands, market themselves, tell their brand story. And she was the one that came up with this topic because I had not heard of it before. So we're going to, really do a deep dive. And since we started researching this, I found that it really, the Queen Bee Syndrome falls into a larger category of a paradigm where there's all this emphasis on the boss being the team lead, being some kind of superstar, unicorn, supernova, and that person tends to overshadow the other people on the team. And so the dynamics are not healthy and the performance is not optimal. So we're going to take a dive into that. But first of all, I have a little poll for you. One question. Your answers are anonymous, so don't be afraid to answer, but we want to know, do you prefer to work for a man or a woman as your boss, or does it not matter? So let's see what people say in this poll, because there's national research. All right, so what we have, let me see if I can, I'm going to share the results. So we have 13% prefer to work for a man, 38% prefer to work for a woman, and 50% say it doesn't matter. All right. Well, and also you could say that, well, it depends on the individual. But Louise, I'd like for you to start by introducing us a little bit. How did this topic get on your radar?
Well, it's interesting. I went into the corporate world and the work world when women really did have to fight for their positions and things. And so I became an executive partner at the William & Mary MBA school. And I started talking to other women who had been out 5 years in the workforce. And they asked the question, I said, well, how do you find the workforce? There are more women out there than ever working in the workforce. How has your experience been with women bosses? And they said, awful. They really found that women were not encouraging them. They put up obstacles in front of the place. And that just really blew my mind that in this day, 2018, when there are more women in the workplace than ever and more women in positions of management, that we are still getting those results. And the polls, even though our little poll here didn't say that. It just really kind of concerns me that I think there was a survey done by the American Management Association, and 95% of the respondents believe that they had been undermined by another woman in the workforce. Why is that happening right now? That's just crazy.
It is crazy, and it's really sad. And there's actually, as I have found out, a lot of research done on this syndrome, and it is documented that women tend to be more rude than to other women than to men, or than men are to women. So it's really just remarkable, and something that that we have to get beyond, because it's not helping us, it's not helping anybody.
Well, I think if you looked at there's a definition for the queen bee, and that is the stereotypical queen bee bullies subordinates and obstructs other women's career advancement. They seem to be selfish and incentive and power hungry. We've broken the glass ceiling in a lot of industries, and we should be doing the opposite, where we're sponsoring and promoting women and really helping them get ahead instead of the opposite. And that's true, by the way, if your employees are male or female.
Correct.
But we tend to be hardest on other women, and it's kind of counterintuitive, since women are known to be more nurturing.
Yes.
And have more empathy. but somehow when we get in these positions, we lose that. Now that's, that I'm not trying to throw a blanket on all women, but I bet if we all sat back and thought about it, we could come up with an example of, I have one. I was with Fortune magazine. I was in the publishing side, and I had been there quite some time. We had about 100 salespeople worldwide, and I wasn't ranked in the top 5. Mm-hmm. But I worked remotely from Williamsburg, and there was a new female boss that came in to Atlanta, and she had been known to be kind of clawing her way up, but I thought, certainly, here I am, one of the top producers. It was more important to her that she know what I was doing every single moment of every day than for me to be a top 5 producer. And ultimately, I left the company because of that. I chose to leave because I was given an ultimatum of either you come back to Atlanta and I know what you're doing every minute of the day, than me producing. And that just wasn't the kind of environment that I wanted to be in. And this doesn't just happen in big companies, by the way. I know some of our people that are on here are on big companies, but it also happens in smaller companies. Say you have a company where, say an insurance company, and you hire a lot of women in the customer service area. Mm-hmm. They don't have to be highly educated. They can be just, great women to work there. Is it a congenial working environment, or is there a lot of drama going on?
Right.
And people reporting back to me say there's a lot of drama going on because we're not helping each other. Does that make sense? In fact, I think we almost are creating a victim society of women versus the opposite when we do that to ourselves, because when we do that, everybody loses. And we become, we look like victims, which is a sad state of affairs.
Well, then looking like a victim or identifying in any way with that blinds you to any kind of solution or moving ahead. It's really something that we need to be careful of. And I
think Sheryl Sandberg wrote, she almost had it right, I guess. We need to lean in, but not just to our work, but also towards each other.
Yeah, oh, that's good. Oh, and by the way, I want to just say that those of you who are on this webinar, you are welcome to ask questions in the chat. And I will be bringing to Louise as we go along. So we're established that we have bosses who are micromanagers or bullying or mean or just not creating a helpful environment. What can you do if you're in that situation? What are things?
That's the $64,000 question. I think we have to realize we can't change someone, right? The first step is realizing we're not going to be able to change that person. So that's step 1.
Right.
Step 2 is focus on ways where you can demonstrate and document your worthiness. So that is and become your own advocate. And this is where women aren't good at this. We're not good at being our own advocates. So, step 3 is to volunteer for those hard task committees, anything where you can get exposure to people other than just your boss.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
I think cultivating key relationships outside.
Absolutely.
How can you do that? Like, what did you suggest? Like,
I think you can do that by looking for opportunities where you can serve on a committee with some other people in the organization.
Right.
I think that's key. Find networking opportunities within your own organization. If you're in a smaller to mid-sized company, come up with an idea where you can foster this congenial idea. Maybe it's a coffee break or something where people can get to know each other a little better, and from all walks of life, not just one, not just the customer service side, but bring different departments together. Right. And that kind of plays into what you were talking about is on leadership, is that the more we get to know each other and make it a more, and I don't mean just structured thing, let's have a company lunch. That feels forced.
Right, it does.
Research shows that if you're just getting to know each other and having a cup of coffee, how's your day? What are you working on? And that kind of thing, that's where some of the best ideas come up with. Oh, well, I've had a similar situation and this worked for me, but
Right.
it's not forced in that way. And then
Right.
I think step 4, I would say, is start your own brag campaign.
I love
And again,
that.
you're not great on that, and I'm not talking about where you go and you try to throw other people under the bus, or that you want to exclude other people and say, hey, look at me, I'm better than everybody else.
Right.
But if you've documented what you have done, then send an email to your team, your boss and her bosses, and saying, thank you so much for being grateful for having this opportunity to work on this team. I was glad I was able to help by contributing this idea that saved the company money or whatever that is, right? So, and close it by, again, we talked about this before, it's the benefit sell.
Oh yeah, that is such a good thing.
So
yes,
whatever you're doing, So whether it's your personal brand, your company's brand, or trying to sell yourself within an organization, how are you going to help benefit them? So it's not what you can do for them, is how it is that you can help them obtain their goals. It's helping other people look good and meet their goals is going to help you look good.
Right.
So,
we have to connect the dots for them. We think what we're doing, it's obvious that that I'm a top performer, but you have to explicitly.
So how does that, if your boss has a goal, find out what, you should know what those are, then find ways to help your team get there, because it's going to make her look good. And guess what? If you help her make it look good, most chances, unless you have a queen bee, she's going to appreciate that. For instance, if you're going in an interview, internally or externally, if you know what they're looking for as a recruiter, what this job is expecting of you, show how your skills help them reach that goal. So it's the benefit sell. Just like you were selling a widget. If you're going to sell me a television, I need to know, if you knew what's most important to me on that I need to get into Netflix, or, somebody else may think it's sound. You can sell that product better to me if I understand what your needs are.
Right. I've got a question here.
Okay.
It says, as an entrepreneur, I occasionally work with clients, male or female, who exhibit queen bee syndrome. How can I manage these situations?
Good question. I mean, that is, especially as an entrepreneur, I've run up against several of those. I'm sure Sherry would agree. Some of our clients that are very entrenched. Again, asking them what's most important to them. So if you're an entrepreneur, I would say, first off, understand what they're trying to accomplish and focus on things that can help them obtain that. I don't know if that person has a specific example, but I would say, again, it's a benefit sell.
Right. But let's say I can kind of tee off that, as I feel like there's so many competitors in Charleston, because a lot of people move here. Like, I'll become a communication coach. I'll become a coach. No, there's no jobs, no worry. I'll just create it. And that's fine. But some people can be like more, just not collaborating, but rather like you feel like they're hoarding information or maybe talking bad about you. Haven't experienced that personally, but I have heard that happen for other people.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. You have to rise above that again and see what skills and attributes that you have that set you apart. It's your own brand messaging that can help you here.
Okay, that's it. And that's whether you work in a company or have your own company.
Exactly. So when we're consulting with a company, we really walk through what are the attributes that set you apart. Your distinctive selling points, or your points of differentiation, is the way we put it. And even with a queen bee, male or female, if you want to look at it that way, you really have to work to find out what their needs are, and then how you uniquely can help them solve their problem. Because as a coach, you have a niche. You
Right.
tend to work with certain groups of people, and you find that, and that's distinguishes you. Not
Right.
that you can't do it for all kinds of people, but you also have found that niche that works extremely well for you. And I
Right.
think that,
Right. Just like anybody an engineer working in a company can have
right.
her niche. And I was going to say something similar to the benefit sale, or a way to implement that. The way I think about it and teach it is also giving your boss talking points to talk to her boss.
Right.
Because really you need to be thinking about not just communicating with your boss, but without being, jumping the ladder and getting into trouble, but you want the word to go above.
That's part of a brag campaign too.
Yeah.
And I also, let's just remember this, talking specifically about the queen bee syndrome, men didn't get ahead by being mean to men.
That is such a good point. Yes.
Right. So they did a better job of, let's go play golf, or let's go have a drink, or whatever, make it in a more congenial atmosphere. So if and I'm a big believer in a very diverse workforce. I don't want it to be lopsided or whatever. I think it's important we have that, a good balance of people in there, but we definitely need to be helping each other and not working against each other. So that fifth step I wanted to bring up, to reiterate, 1, realize you can't change the person. 2, focus on ways you can demonstrate and document your worthiness and become your own advocate. Number 3, volunteer for the hard tasks, committees, or anything that can earn you exposure beyond your boss. 4, start your brag campaign. This is not about putting others down to make yourself look good. If you worked on a project, let people know. Write that thank you note of gratitude for being there, but then tell them what you did and how it helped the company. And the 5th one, if all else fails, I always say take a lateral. Just like in football, the lateral pitch here. If you genuinely find yourself not promotable due to this boss, male or female, by the way.
Right. Either way.
Look for a lateral move in the department or to another boss. But never burn bridges or throw people under the bus, because that will come to haunt you, because that person in management probably has somebody's ear.
Right.
Somebody is believing in them. So it doesn't help your cause by being ugly, right? So that's not the way to do it.
So we've got 2 questions here. From our first person, the entrepreneur, she wants to elaborate that she's talking about someone micromanaging. So how do you deal with that? And then we have a question about, somebody wants you to elaborate on some different approaches to the brag campaign.
Okay, well, good. Well, you can probably help me with this micromanagement thing. That squelches, that micromanaging does the opposite of what people think it does. A topic for another time is really that being a good boss is not rocket science. But, it really isn't. You get obstacles out of the way that keep your people from being a good consultant. So, good employee. So I think from that micromanagement standpoint, maybe you go to your boss and say, I understand. Oh, sorry. I thought I had that turned off. That you, I understand her management style, that you might work best if you have an opportunity to explore this opportunity, go down this route. You really just have to figure out why they feel like they have to micromanage you.
Well, it has to do with some kind of
where it is. If you've got to kind of figure out why they feel the need to do that. So
yes, and try to. It's the problem, a lack of trust, which you can overcome to a certain extent. But if somebody can have deep psychological issues with trust that are beyond your purview.
Right.
So,
and you're not going to be able to change that. But I think trying to understand why they feel like they need to micromanage, is that because somebody is putting a lot of pressure on them to meet a certain
Right, that could
goal,
be.
well, then figure that out, and maybe you then can figure a way to help her meet that goal so she doesn't feel like she has to put the pressure on. But I think we've all had those kind, and again, having the benefit of a couple of years out there in the business world, when I've had those, you just have to kind of work your way around that and figure out why they feel that. Because usually, unless it's insecurity thing, somebody's putting the kibosh on them to read a good.
Right, it could be that. Yes.
So maybe you can figure out, again, in that collaborative environment, how to help them meet that goal.
Right. And on different approaches to the brag campaign, what I teach is that every time you meet with your boss, you want to be saying what's going well, in addition to the things you need help with. But you need, and when you're going through what's going well, you need to word it in a way that, you know, we are contributing to the bottom line, or this initiative, or this project through this, this, and this every week. And it's reminding them, they may know what you're doing, but so when their boss asks them, they can say, oh my gosh, Louise is just rocking it. You know, the project is, you know, under budget, and they're just, you know, soaring or something. What else would you suggest?
Well, I think I actually had a conversation with a young woman. She works in Birmingham, and she couldn't figure out, and she actually had a male boss. She worked in almost an all male office.
Did a male queen bee.
Yeah, it was a male queen bee. And she couldn't figure out, she was, you know, getting ready to go in for a conversation about trying to ask for a raise, and, you know, and she had taken on all this extra responsibility and help pitch in. I said, have you documented it?
Oh.
Make it easy for your boss to say yes. Okay, that's what you want to do. So if you write it down, instead of just saying it, if you write it down, you know, she was able to document, well, I stepped, when we lost this person, I stepped in and did this, and we kept the numbers up, or I did this or did that. Well, make it easy for your boss to say yes. All right. So again, it's okay for us, male or female, but since women are not known for doing this, to write down what you've been doing and try to quantify it. Okay, it can't be just all feel-good things. Try to quantify how you've made a difference, and ask for a monthly or quarterly meeting with your boss to discuss those specific things. Be proactive. Don't wait for your annual review to do it.
Oh, absolutely not.
Right?
That's just crazy.
You know, if you feel like you need to have a touchstone with your boss on a weekly basis, do it. You know, that's an important thing. If you have an idea to bring customer service better to your office, don't wait until something happens. Go in a, you know, craft it in a way that's benefit sell. How is it going to benefit the company? And take it to somebody. And if they don't want to listen, find a way, you know, to do it in a group where you're not throwing somebody under the bus, but sharing ideas. So
right, in any kind of meeting environment, if it's appropriate. I mean, the thing is, we just think that we don't need to do this, and plus there's so much else. I mean, you have all your other work to do, but really, you know, putting on your PR hat, your marketing manager hat when you work at a company, if you're an engineer or quality control or data analyst or finance VP, marketing yourself.
absolutely.
And if you're a team lead, you really want to highlight what your whole team is doing.
Exactly. So if you, I mean, I think, you know, for another time, we might talk about some of those things that you can do to foster a dynamic result from your team. Well, just remember, we're all our own personal brand, and we don't want to be, you know, all in a silo effect, because that doesn't work well, right? So I think we need to remember that we need to foster that idea of exchange. So if you document, thank, make somebody else look good by saying, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. So you're being grateful. And I'm delighted I was able to bring this idea up that help us do X, Y, and Z. So I think
Right.
that's
Bragging on your boss when you have
right.
the chance.
And being, if you're a manager, this is not, and this is you should want to push it down as well as saying, find ways to be open to your employees or your subordinates' ideas.
Right.
Be curious and say, hey, I don't have all the answers. Be vulnerable in that sense. I don't have all the answers, and encourage them to share and make it an environment where you can share. So let's talk about, we're talking about people that may have queen bee or bosses, but we need to be aware that we need to make sure we're not doing that. And the way we can do that is be curious and encouraging of other people to share their ideas.
Right. I find that it's good to add to, there's usually some people that speak up in a meeting and other people that don't. But after those people that normally speak up say their piece, to ask, are there any more viewpoints?
And you may have to call on somebody specific and say, hey, Laura,
right.
You've been working on this project. How do you see it?
Right.
And then the other thing is, you don't want to always put and this is hard for extroverts or type A's to hold their mouth, and I have probably been
talking it
because I get so excited about an idea. But as a boss, sometimes being humble and just being quiet and listening is really important.
Yes.
And I've learned that over time, and I'm still not great at it, but I try. And then also, how do you receive information? So input. So the people watch. How do you receive input, not only from people above you, but people below? So do you just brush it off and you only listen to the people above you, or do you actually take in what other people are telling you? And, be passionate. If they find an idea, help promote them. Because again, it's not rocket science. If you help the people that work for you succeed, you will succeed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is as easy as that. That doesn't mean you do the work for them or that you accept unacceptable work. But if you help promote them and get obstacles out of the way and let them contribute, you will be successful as a boss.
Right. In a way, it's like a dichotomy that you have to be promoting yourself, but you're also promoting your team, your boss. I mean, it's really like we're all in this together, and it's a community.
Absolutely.
And when you shine the light on other people, it shows that you're confident enough that you don't feel the need to try to always, how the one-uppers always, no matter what you say, they've done one better, and they're always turning the conversation to themselves. Those are conversational narcissists.
Well, I'm just going to bring this YouTube video up that we talked about.
Yes, it's a great one.
Because I think it's really, I was meeting with my friend the other night for a drink, and I was telling him what the webinar, Joe, if you're on here, thank you for this. And he was saying, there's this YouTube video I saw from a TED Talk that might be interesting to you. And it was by Margaret Heffernan. I think I said her name. And it's why it's time to forget the pecking order at work. Mm-hmm. And it's exactly to what we're talking about. Her philosophy is if organizations have always been run on that super chicken model, you got a bunch of super chickens where your only value is if you're outperforming other people. So then have all these people that would climb over everybody else to get the top, and you build no loyalty within the organization.
Right.
So if somebody comes and says, "Oh, I'll offer you super chicken, the next greatest thing," they're gone, right? They have no loyalty to the company. And we've used the jelly bean example for this in some of our workshops, where the collective minds solve the problem better than the single one. So we ask people individually to guess how many jelly beans are in 3 different jars, and then you take the average of all the guests, and that average is closer to the answer than the individual ones are.
Oh, wow, that's good.
So, and I think it's played out most times. So, I think that's an important thing to do is I think it's called, there's a word I wanted to use for this. I think it's called an idea-rich environment. Yeah, it's, if you build an environment where ideas are easily exchanged, then you have an office environment that's rich, or you've got fertile ground for that.
Right.
So, they can give input in a non-threatening way. And I think she was the one that actually mentioned this schedule that she runs a tech company, and she has scheduled coffee breaks, not where everybody comes in a room and, tries to force that issue. People are just getting to know each other. Maybe they take but the company wants them to do that. And they want them to say, hey, I've got this problem in customer service today. Have you run into that one? And, oh, maybe you have. And they can share ideas. And that is what is a idea-rich environment.
We've got another question here. This Daniel Goleman introduced us to emotional intelligence several years ago. Not in every case, but in most, women have a higher level of emotional intelligence than men. I agree. Mm-hmm. This is a much sought after attribute in the corporate world. Why then do some women forfeit this trump card when they get into a position of leadership or management? Your thoughts?
That's really interesting. And Laura and I both read a lot of research on that, and we really don't know why women do this. Was it that they had to fight so hard to get there that they feel like other women should have to fight that hard?
Right.
Yeah. Or do they get penalized in that environment by promoting women?
Or do they feel like they're training us? They're training other women.
I mean, I don't think it's the victim where they're getting, it may be in some cases they're, they feel like, well, if I promote a woman, then I'm, showing favoritism. Well, it should be colorblind, gender blind, whoever's best at it, then, that's the way you do it. But, I think what I understand and what I've looked at the research is, there is no one reason that we can really put our finger on, but the bigger question is then how do you get around it? Because you can't change that person, and if they're already doing that and they're in a position of authority, they ain't going to change.
Right. So I think those are all of our questions. Why don't you recap your 5 steps again to bring it back?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Step 1. Just realize that you're not going to change that person. They're going to be entrenched. And again, not all of them are that way. And this applies to men or women, by the way. Number 2, focus on ways you can demonstrate and document your worthiness and become your own advocate. Yay. All of us need to do that.
Exactly.
3, volunteer for hard tasks, committees, or anything that can earn you exposure beyond your boss.
Yes.
Small company, large company, it doesn't matter. There are opportunities out there. Go in and ask.
It doesn't have to be a high profile. It could be organizing, St. Patrick's Day party or something.
Right. It could be, this coffee idea.
Right.
Hey, or idea exchange or whatever you want it to be. 3, start your own 4, start your own brag campaign. And that is, if you worked on a special project, document all that you've done, and then send a thank you note to your boss, her boss, and other teammates, thanking them for the opportunity. State what your contributions were in a meaningful way, i.e., an idea that saved the company money, be quantitative if you can, and that you were glad you could help move the company towards their goals. Again, it's the benefit sell.
And putting it in the medium of a handwritten note is really going to blow
You can send an email, that's great, but handwritten notes, I can tell you in this day and time, really does make a difference. So, and then number 5, if all else fails, take a lateral. And that means, if you really have gotten to the point where you've tried everything else and you don't feel like you're promotable due to your boss, male or female, look for a lateral move. I know somebody in a government position who there was a personality difference. They tried everything he ended up taking a lateral move to stay there, and kept on gaining exposure. And then he was hired by another government organization in Northern Virginia and is doing quite well.
Right.
So,
Good work is going to be recognized. So.
Right. Don't let it beat you down, and it's easy to feel that way, but we have to be in charge of our own destiny. And this applies to sexual harassment, which is a whole nother topic, but we need to do something about it instead of just sitting there taking it. So
that's right. You're in charge of your career. So
you are. But pretend like your brand, your own personal brand, and sell your own brand. Know what your messaging is.
Right. Thank you, Louise. Thank you, everyone who was on our call. And we will send out the recording probably the end of this afternoon. It could be tomorrow. But
well, thanks, Laura, for having me. I appreciate it.
It was fun.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Until the next one. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.